Okay, guys, we're going to begin now. This is the Using Final Cut Pro 10 Basics of Apple Workstation and Bigfoot Research. This lecture is another culmination of 10 years of experience that I have with making every mistake in the book and suffering extreme consequences for it, sometimes even losing hundreds of hours of filmmaking process because compatibility was an issue. And so we talk about compatibility first because it directly affects the back end of what you will put out. And it begins with number one right here. Cameras, cards, and software all have to be compatible. When you buy a camera, one of the first things that you're going to be interested in is how it's recording. And so you're going to look into that, and it's going to tell you the type of card that you need. What we found is that oftentimes in these instructions, they fail to tell you that if you're going to shoot in the highest resolution your device will actually achieve, you'll need a higher processing megabytes per second memory card. They typically give consumers the low end, any card will work, because they don't want you to start looking up all of the things that you need to go with it and find out that they're all super expensive, even though the camera's affordable. This is my take on it because I've seen it 100 times. So in the end, it's making sure when you buy the camera, before you buy the camera, that what you're buying shoots in formatting that will complement the nature of the films you will be making. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about importing. I'm talking about compression ratios on the back end. And first and foremost, I'm talking about recording formats. The two most appropriate and highest definition recording formats that you can achieve are MP4, and H.264. Those compression ratios are typically the best ones. So if you buy a camera, understand that while it will shoot the raw footage, in transfer, it will want to compress that data. This is where the rubber meets the road, because the quality of what you bring in on the front end directly affects the quality of what you put out on the back end, specifically because most of our work isn't 10 feet away from the subjects. So we will need to zoom on the timeline. How much depends on the distance we were. But when zooming on the timeline, if you start with 1080p at full distance, by the time you zoom into the appropriate section of tree line that could be 40 to 50 yards away, your footage is now 360p. Whereas if you start in 4K at 60 frames per second, when I zoom in on the timeline, we get what you see on this compatibility page. This Bigfoot is a lot clearer. This Bigfoot we see on this compatibility page was shot at an appropriate distance with an iPad using the appropriate resolution, or when we zoomed in on the timeline, you would never have seen the detail. And that's a simple fact. So for moving forward, we talk about cameras, cards, and software. We want to make sure that our cameras shoot in one of the two or both, MP4 or H.264. And then we want to make sure that the card that we buy can process at the frame rate that you choose to use, which is the resolution, right? If I'm shooting with a camera that can shoot in 720, 1080p, low 4K, which is 2160 by 3148, or actual 4K. You can even get cameras nowadays that shoot 5, 6, 7, and 8K. In the end, your video will max out at whatever your computer compatibility allows it to. So if your computer, you're using a small MacBook Air, the maximum resolution that that particular device may achieve is 1080p, or one of the newer models may be 4K. Well, if you're loading a 5K film strip, understand that whatever that computer puts out will only be maximized at 4K. So this is where we're talking about devices and compatibility. Understanding the device you have, the computer that you'll be loading a workstation into, is very important. It's going to tell us what our maximum resolution for output will be. the computer will say right in there about this computer somewhere, and it's going to tell you the maximum resolution on this screen is 1080p, or 2160. Its low end 4K is like 2160 by 3840, something like that. So you want to know, because if you're buying cameras that shoot in 4K, but you're processing on a laptop or a PC that only produces 1080p, you just wasted all that money on those cameras. And so this is where, before we start to make purchases in the future, we understand that what we purchase on the front end and how we link it through compatibility with the computer itself. The camera is linked with the proper cards that will write at the proper speeds to accommodate 4K. And then we're using it and using cameras that will actually give us the highest quality compression ratio. So when we bring it into our workstation, we're dealing with something that people can see, not something that looks like it was shot with a cell phone. And so our goal with compatibility is ultimately to produce the highest quality documentation possible. And like I said, it begins with cameras, cards, and software. Learning your camera requirements is the most important aspect of what's going on. Case in point, my partner failed to look at cards and compatibility. The first 3 expeditions, we were dealing with issues that we didn't necessarily understand were going on. And in the end, I didn't have anything to do with purchasing the cards that were there. And so when I checked the devices to try to understand why they were sending messages to us, the devices themselves are saying we can't shoot in 4K. They're not telling us why. They're saying we can't shoot in 4K. This $4,000 camera is telling Terry, I can't shoot in 4K. So I'm troubleshooting, and what do I find? A link in the very first chain of this whole thing was incompatible. We were shooting with a card that was compatible for 1080p, not 4K at 120 frames per second, which is what Carrie was attempting to do. So we then had to go back, and when we look, they're hundreds of dollars. And so what do we see here? Well, as a researcher, what I see is the higher quality devices that shoot in higher quality footage and resolutions also require higher quality cards to process that footage. And they're way outside the normal price range that most people can afford. Shooting in high quality footage is very expensive. And it's also very time consuming as we move through the process, but also, unfortunately, a necessary component in exposing these creatures. These 1080p cameras simply are not getting it done. And we've seen that entire 1080p generation of Bigfoot researchers. Is it done? No, it's not. We're now moving into 4K in this generation, and we've seen leaps and bounds in Bigfoot research, right? So what else do we see? Well, on the back end, we see technologies being engineered with limitations now that are very specific and actually very coincidental when it comes to documenting these creatures solidly. The software in these devices is literally, I believe, based on what I've seen, being manufactured so that those colors that they produce will not be seen. Cameras have the ability to do whatever we tell them to do now. Software is amazing, and we can do this, but they're choosing not to. That, to me, is curious. And as you continue to research cameras and try to up your game, you're going to see that while this camera does shoot in 4K at 120 frames per second, it's in Ultra HD. And Ultra HD looks like crap when you throw it on a timeline. So you got 120 frames per second. You paid $9,000 for the camera. And the reality is the Osmo shoots more clear footage than the $10,000 camera, because the formatting that they give you on the back end looks like 1080p, and it's supposed to be 4K. I have devices like this, Melanie will attest to this, where we're shooting 4K 60 frames per second, and it looks worse than the footage Melanie shot that you're looking at, this gray individual on the screen right now. That's a 5-year-old iPad that shoots 4K 30 frames per second. And it looks way better than the iPad that was twice as expensive, twice as new. It was made 2 years ago, but it shoots in UHD, Ultra HD. It's a terrible format. So I have questions for you. Steve, what are the 2 formats that are most compatible for clarity in Bigfoot research.
The two formats, MP4 and 264.
That's notes. That's good. Notes are good. That's good. Kathy, I know you heard that, so I'm not going to bother you with that one. But in the end,
I was going to say something.
Sure.
With you're discussing the cameras and yeah, turn this up a little bit. When I was looking at Sean's camera, he had the HD on there also. But I don't think it's on Osmo 1.
Okay.
But it was on Osmo 2. But you don't want it on HD because then it affects everything else, right? I mean,
well, what you want is you want to see where it says 4K 60 on the screen of the Osmo.
Right. That's what mine does. Yes.
And that's it. Now with his, I'm telling you, there's something going on because that man was having trouble shooting footage there. Everywhere we went, he had trouble shooting footage with that camera. The Osmo is typically not like that. Now, what I'll notice and what I'll tell you is when I shot footage, trying to make sure that everything was okay, and I walked around the back of that head where those big creatures were in this video we're going to break down.
Yep.
My Osmo kept moving straight up into the sky, shooting the treetops. No matter what I did, I reset it 4 or 5 times. And here's the other thing. I shot clips with that Osmo the whole expedition. Do you know I only have 10 clips? I had 3 days worth of data and only 10 clips made it out on that memory card.
You're
and
kidding.
Only one of them.
See, I was worried about that, so I changed the card every day.
That's good. That's really good. That's really a good thing to do.
I had a different card every day. So, I mean, I think I got everything.
And that's probably why you got the footage out, because our situation is that the cards are so expensive that the 4 I have to be in all other devices. So what I ended up with was a real good thermal expedition, but that thing has metal casing. The whole thing is a rifle scope and it's inside aluminum and metal. So I think it's blocking frequencies that may be messing it up. The Osmo, for some reason, I can't explain that. I've never had that happen. I shot 25 gigs at Donnie Miller's with that Osmo, and those creatures were all around me. What I suspect is going on is that when those things, whatever they are, get really close, it doesn't matter what kind of camera you have. If they're in the area, they may jam the large camera, but I always had my Osmo in my pocket. And then after the camera died and I was sure that everything was okay, I pulled the Osmo out and started shooting footage. On the hikes, the Osmo went dead. I was using the Osmo only. Well, we had that thing flying around us. We've proven that conclusively with footage. It's real. It's colored red, white, and blue. And there's a little inscription on the side of it. I just can't read it because it's too blurry. Whatever that thing is man-made. Whatever that thing is in between me and a group of Sasquatch. Whatever that thing is affected the card, affected the camera, and affected my brain. Because literally, I can't remember anything after that until these women, we were somewhere else when I came to and started to realize what was going on. I couldn't find my camera. There were strange people coming out of the woods, walking all around me. And I suddenly couldn't realize I didn't understand what was happening. So whatever that device was had a profound effect on my memory. And there's no doubt about it. You know what I mean? I mean, I was already sick and working the expedition sick, you know, with the infections. But in the end, that was extreme. And I determined that there's about a 30-minute span where I'm missing time. So what do those devices do electromagnetically? The patents that Scotty uncovered clearly talk about how these things can affect you like this. We've looked at this, 6 different ways, and I can't come to any other conclusion other than this is technology doing this. So when you do all this and your compatibility is perfect and your cameras and your cards are perfect and your software is perfect and you know your cameras, you know your card requirements, and you do all of it right and you walk in on a group of Sasquatch, you just did it, only to find out that there's someone in between you and the group after all this work and all this money. So these are the kind of things that you'll have to remember. You know what I mean? Like, you can do everything right and literally find the creatures, filming the creatures. And there's some people or something is trying to stop you, and it's on camera. So prepare yourselves for the big disappointments. I've stood right in front of a creature from less than 100 yards away, filmed him as he stepped out and chattered in 4K. I shot 3 clips of him. I can't access any of those clips, not a single one of them. And the memory card's sitting right here in front of me right now. To this day, unrecognizable format is what it says. You know what I mean? So,
And we've been getting that from the beginning.
yeah. Oh, that's for sure. The game cameras.
Started on the game cams.
The game cameras every single time, and the bait's gone. So the camera sits there, you're filming the forest and leaves moving or triggering the camera to take pictures. You know the camera's working. It's 17 hours of perfect pictures every minute. And then suddenly the bait's visible and everything. Suddenly the camera starts jiggling. The camera starts having electrical malfunction. You get 5 clips in a row that say error file, and then it comes back on, works perfectly, and the bait's gone. This was a dozen times. And we had all that footage we couldn't access. So these are the kind of things that you're going to experience no matter what you do perfectly.
Pardon me, Kathleen. What
Yes.
kind of card do you use on your Osmo?
I don't have it here in front of me. I have to run and get it if I.
That's fine. No worries.
It's a 248 gigabyte card that processes in the appropriate 4K at 60 frames max. So
Okay.
any of those, trying to think, it's
I got a 128, so I need to get a bigger card, don't I?
actually no. Hang on one second, because here's the card itself right here. And matter of fact, this came out of my Osmo. That's what the card looks like.
Okay.
Right there. It's a mini. It's 248, and it's a Scan Disc Ultra, is what it's called.
Okay. I think
Yep,
I got.
Scan
I
Disc
think I.
Ultra.
I think I got that in a 128.
That's not bad. It's not about the storage as much as it is about processing the Mbps to write in 4K.
Okay.
That's really what it is. And cards, there is a difference, Steve, between the 30 frames per second processor on the mini and the 60 frames per second processor on the mini. Typically, the 128 gigabyte card is a 30 frame per second processor. One of the reasons they make the 248 is the footage weighs twice as much. It's 60 frames. So you're getting twice the amount of data. Therefore, they make the card storage capacity bigger. Okay. Do we have any questions before we move on? I'm going to read this last thing here just one more time, but before we move on about compatibility, cameras, computers, anything.
Yeah, I got to upgrade my phone because I can't even download the app for my Osmo.
Oh yeah. Yeah, man. You know, the funny thing is this. I'm not going to give you an opinion either way about what you should do as far as like involving the company in any of your camera's software. I'm going to tell you my experience. I used the thermal 3 times without incident. I registered the device, and every expedition since I've had an incident. I registered the XF400 for the warranty, and it started having problems after I registered it. I'm actually convinced that when you register it, your device's manufacturing number, the serial number, goes into a database. Yeah. I'm not kidding you. And I really do believe that there is one signal that can jam all these cameras at the same time, because we've experienced it. And the device that I don't have registered is the one device I've been getting footage out because I didn't own it. It was given to me, and that's the Osmo. And that device it's real sneaky because you can carry it and no one can see it. Then suddenly you have a camera in your hand, but it only looks like a ball this big sticking out the top of your hand, the gimbal. So I think that there is something visual with this, but also I'm leaning towards, if you register your device, there's a chance they're going to jam it. The FCC says they can, and the device manufacturers have to obey what they say about that. FCC Rule 15 means all cameras or electronics in the United States have to be manufactured with the ability to be interfered with and shut down from remote sources.
Damn.
No kidding. So, okay, for instance, this compatibility thing, shooting in 4K at 30 frames per second will require less card write speed than a camera that's shooting in 4K at 60. I think we pretty much established that with that last question, Steve. The same camera requires different write speeds to shoot in higher resolution. You always want to check that. We need to look for these compression formats when purchasing. And this is true with any camera you buy, because certain workstations will not import certain formats. So you want to make sure that compatibility between all of your devices before you purchase, okay? Slide number 2. We're going to be setting up the workstation, and I'm going to give you an example of this in the second hour, but we're going to verbally go over it right now. And the process is basically really simple. You're going to open the program and you're going to set up a new library or project. Now, if you have an existing project and you're simply adding to it, the good thing about Final Cut is once you set up your project, it opens to your project. It opens to the last thing you were working on, period. One of the other really cool things about Final Cut Pro is you don't really need to save anything. So you could be working, and if you choose to hit that little red button at the top, which we're going to show you, when it closes, it saves the last thing you did before it closes. So you don't ever have to worry about that. That's one of the things I like. Now, where you're talking about your PC programs and the things that you're eventually going to choose, they may have different aspects like that. Typically, most PC or Microsoft compatible programs have many more steps in between. So saving could end up being a 5-command process that you'll have to learn on your, on your own with that whole thing. I will say this. One of the better things about Mac that I noticed is that it cuts those middle steps out of the way. And as a direct result, it saves so much time in the workstation. So I think that programs for PC have evolved to begin doing that, because from what I hear, they're very work-friendly now, workflow friendly. Final Cut is different in that you can drag and drop stuff. You don't have to import it. I'm going to show you all of that. But like, I can literally drag something off my desktop and just slap it on the timeline, and it just spreads right out perfectly. And I can move my cursor over, and now whatever was on my timeline 13 seconds earlier is in my movie. And that's what I like about it. The import process is instantaneous. It's not a 5-step process to get something in, where you have to identify the exact location of this, the exact location of that, and it's 16 sub menus in, and there's this and that. That's the difference between Mac and PC, where the workflow is concerned. So what we'll do is we'll open it, we'll set up a new library. We're going to adjust the settings of the timeline, and that's going to end up being the settings for your movie. So we're going to look at the footage. We're going to say, what is the footage resolution? And then we're going to set up the timeline appropriate to the resolution of the footage. And then we'll begin import. Once we import this to the timeline, we'll begin the next step. And in this whole process here, I thought I put this before that, because this was actually something I needed to put before that. So the necessities of producing a film far outweigh the necessities of finding the creatures. There is more to learn in this aspect of the entire venture than in any other part of it. And I say that specifically because you're dealing with probably 75 different companies and their software all put in one package to try to be as compatible as possible. And yes, Apple does update, but the reality is that in processing any film on your computer, you need an external hard drive. And the reason that is when you load a film onto a timeline in your computer copies it and puts it in the background. And what it copies eats your memory. It not only eats your storage memory, but it eats your flash memory, which is what you process the movie you're making with. So you have two.
Which affects how fast it goes.
Yes, it affects. Well, yes, there's two things happening when you load a clip. Your computer is processing it and storing it. Now, as that storage builds, this processing slows down. And so as the movie starts to develop, and it doesn't matter what computer you're using, this is true. As your film develops and you continue making parts to it and adding stuff, your computer starts to slow down, and it continues getting worse and worse and worse until basically you're sitting there and you throw an image that weighs 1 kilobyte on the timeline and the whole computer crashes because you weren't paying attention to the flash memory and the storage, and you let it all pile up. These are the types of things that you need external processing for. You will, instead of importing footage into your laptop or your Mac, you will middle the import with your Mac or your laptop or your desktop PC into an external hard drive, which will then not only store the footage and keep it off your computer so that your computer doesn't suffer that slowdown, but it will also process the film for you, making sure that your computer actually does last a few more years than it would if you were grinding it the way Melanie and I have with every computer we've ever had, right? So in the end, these are the things that we've learned after years. How do we make this more economical in the long run? You use an external hard drive.
And that first year was very painful, learning that
It was.
reality.
It was very painful.
Is Final Cut Pro on the computer or on the hard drive?
Final Cut Pro, explain that. What did you just ask me?
It's on the computer
It's
itself.
on the
right?
computer. Final Cut Pro is on the computer, correct?
Cool.
And
Yeah,
yes,
you'll go to the App Store, the Apple App Store, where it looks like a picnic table icon.
Yep.
You go there and you just, pay the money that they want, and then you download it. But before you do that, you want to check your computer specifications. Now, if you're like Steve, you have a situation where you just downloaded a workstation. Well, I don't know your RAM, the RAM you have on your computer or your storage requirements, but if you were to actually download another workstation, you might cause your computer to collapse because we're not sure.
Yeah. I got a
So
ton of
those
RAM.
are the kind of thing, right? So Kathleen, if you have a minimum bottom line computer, when you download Final Cut, that will take up some of your storage and some of the random access memory processing, which will slow your computer down just because you put Final Cut on it.
Okay.
So what I recommend,
but Final Cut is on the computer.
Yes.
yeah. I mean, you're going to download on a
Yeah.
computer. But so the reality of this is that external hard drives are a necessity because Kathleen, your laptop will not process a complete film with the current RAM and storage capacity that you have in 4K. Now, if you shot it in 720, I suspect you could make a 30-minute film on that laptop. However, the value of any of the Bigfoot footage that you shot will go down considerably. So when you look at it, there's this balance that you have to achieve. Can I process 4K on this computer? Absolutely, if it's rated to do so. So you'll check to see, once you get Final Cut, what it's rated for. The maximum resolution of your laptop is all you're ever going to get out of it. So if it's 1080p, no matter what camera you load, no matter what the resolution of the footage, it will only come out fully finished at 1080p. Now, 4K footage compressed into 1080p actually looks a lot better than 1080p. 1080p 60, that's 60 frames per second, looks more like 4K 30 when it's compressed. You'll see these kind of correlations once you make dozens and dozens of films, and if you get that far. And looking at the external hard drive, there are two considerations that you need. And you're going to want to make notes of this because these are the most important aspects of purchasing an external hard drive. You'll want to look at the megabytes per second write speed, and in particular, the megabytes per second write speed of high quality video processing. To companies, you'll want to look at the processing speed of the hard drive itself, because the processing speed that the drive will write at, they will tell you in the ad, and companies all do the same thing. This thing writes at 950 megabytes per second. This thing writes at 350 megabytes per second. This thing writes at 450 megabytes per second. But guess what? That's text, not 4K video. So therein lies the I need to do further research. That information they're not going to tell you. They're going to tell you this thing is the fastest thing ever and it processes, but no, man, 4K video is what you need to know how it's going to do. What I recommend is don't buy anything that processes less than 1,000 megabytes per second in a hard drive that's external and or close to it, because I'm doing that right now. And it does take considerable time to edit and save a film. I'll give you an example. The movie I just put out from the camp out, the very first one compressed was 25 gigabytes. It was 5 terabytes. 5 terabytes on my timeline. That's 5 terabytes, right? So when I compress that, it compresses to 25 gigs, but it took 7.5 hours to save the first copy of it. And I'm processing on a pretty damn good computer, right? That's a 1 hour film, 7.5 hours just to save it, processing what essentially off of a drive that says it processes at 980 megabytes per second, which ultimately means it processes about 10 to 15 megabytes per second in 4K video. And this is what I'm saying. They're not giving us the truth. To get you to buy it, they're not telling you, yes, when you text, this thing will save it lightning fast. But the second you start processing video, you're back in 1992 again. So what ultimately is a good hard drive? Well, unfortunately, they cost thousands and thousands of dollars for an external hard drive that processes at the speed we require is approximately $10,000. And that makes processing 4K exactly like processing 720. If I throw it on a timeline, 10 seconds later, it's done. But it's going to cost me $10,000 to get that speed. So that's where we're at. You know how they take the internet and they divide it up and they make it so that you have to pay so much for just this much internet now. They did the same thing with every aspect of all of it. And so in the end, you're going to pay for processing, and that's the bottom line. It is worth it, and it does last, but like I said, it's expensive. So the external storage thing, if you have any questions about that, now's the time, and I want to take questions on that if you do, before we move on. Let me give you an example.
Is it the one that you would recommend for my computer then?
Yeah, I would recommend the Samsung Evo. I actually have about 15 different external hard drives. Some of them are 16 terabytes. My favorite drive to process on is the Samsung Evo. It was the fastest drive I have. They make them now 3 times as fast as the one I use. But I've got a 2 terabyte Samsung hard drive that I process. It's called the Evo. And that's how they sell them. 500 gigs, 1 terabyte, 2 terabytes, 4 terabytes. The 2 terabyte that I have used to be lightning quick. I will say that the more you put on the drive, the slower it gets. So if I remove a lot off of it, I can speed that drive up again. So in the end, it's to me, I would buy those before I buy any other kind. Samsung Evo, highest quality processing I've ever seen. And I've worked, like I said, I have about 15 different ones right here in front of me right now.
So the newer ones are like 8 and 10, I think, or 8 and 11 terabytes. Is that better than, or you don't know, or just it won't matter, right? That's just more.
Well, no, it's not about the size. It's about, again, the write speed. Now, what I'm giving you is a balanced middle of the road where you get the 2 terabyte one, you pay $150 and you get processing that's as fast as what I'm doing. You can get like I have these big ones. The problem is these people, they use psychology in how they split this stuff up. They literally have it to where you think in the same line, I'm looking at the same thing as a 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 16 terabytes. But as you get more storage, the write speed slows down.
Okay.
So really, in order for them to keep it in an affordability, as it gets bigger and they offer you more storage, they offer you slower speed. So really, you end up with a hard drive that is great for storage, but you can't make a movie on it in 7 days. You know what I mean? It's like ridiculous. And what we're trying to do is get something done. You know what I mean? So it's like middle of the road is what you're looking for. 2 to 4 terabytes is about all you're going to need anyway. unless you're doing something like me. If you're doing these hour-long documentaries and projects that are high animation, like I do title animations where I'm using text and I'm animating text to try to make it more interesting for viewers with pictures. You've seen it where it says crypto reality in the swamp and it's moving and all this. Those things really put your computer through its paces. You know what I mean? And you need a lot of storage for that. That 30-second thing is a terabyte because the animation weighs so much in 4K. You know what I mean? So that's a little more advanced, but it is the same thing. I need
You
good
almost need one
processing.
hard drive to store everything and a smaller one to put one on only and then while you're working on it.
You can do that any way you want. I have right now on my screen, which you will see, I have 4 hard drives plugged in. One I'm processing on and storing on. And that's a 16 terabyte OMC. And then I have a Toshiba, a WD, and a Samsung, all plugged in right now. Those are storing footage that I need. Could be raw footage from expeditions to camp out and so on. And then there's also intermittent files with, images. And basically every week, Mel will tell you this, I fill my entire desktop up reworking. And then I have to save my whole desktop onto an external drive because my computer grinds to a halt and wants to collapse. Every 7 days is my cycle. And when I'm in a research cycle and I'm actually working. And so in the end, requirements where external storage are concerned are going to be a major concern. I want to impress it upon you. And now we're going to move on to part 2, which is no less important, because when you make something, you definitely want to know where it went when you save it. When was the last time you did that? I do it every day. I forget, right? Set your file path, moron. You know what I mean? I totally forget it. So, but what does that happen? It happens when you create it. When you create that timeline. And we're going to go over that. Like I said, I'm going to literally on screen open Final Cut and set up a brand new Bigfoot movie and load a clip and make it for you right in front of you. So you're going to see the whole process. We're going to get into that. But you definitely want to pinpoint your storage place, man.
And I do want to say here too, that being aware that Final Cut creates backups, is that correct? And the more those backups are taking up space.
Yep.
So when you're finished, you want to delete that stuff.
Well, that's the thing, right? So as soon as you create this thing, it's going to pop up and there's going to be an empty timeline. What you don't see is the backup file. And furthermore, you don't see the XML. Now, the backup file is a picture, a digital picture of the ones and zeros that you've done so far in your film. That's all it is. So they don't weigh much, and they're not really a big concern until you get about 10 years into filmmaking and have never, cleaned your computer. But the XML file, if you screw up and you put that XML file on your computer instead of that external hard drive, you're gonna be taking your computer to the Geek Squad. I got news for you. So what you got to do is make sure pinpointing your storage in the right place. Make sure that the XML file, that's the saved version of everything you're doing. On Mac, it's going to be purple, and it's going to have stars, 4 stars on these squares, and we're going to show you what they look like and take you through the whole thing. But you want to make sure that that's on your external and that you're using your external to process the film, because if you leave it on the Mac HD drive or in your PC on your PC drive, your Dell drive, buddy, it's just a matter of clicks. How many clicks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? Because you're about to collapse your computer in one click at some point. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to load it on our computer, then build a heavy film that will collapse our computer. So number 2, extremely important, extremely important. And you will forget, just like me, you will. Matter of fact, I've got almost upwards of 500 films now, whether they're short or full documentaries. And I just did that last week. I just did it to myself last week with the original camp out video. I collapsed my friggin' computer and had to throw the film away and start over, because it's on your computer. You can't just get rid of it. The computer collapsed. So what do? Well, I had to change out operating systems and start from scratch. So in the end, man, it's like, I know how to get around it, but it's not easy, man. You're essentially going to have to dismantle your whole computer, throw out everything you did, and just write it off. Start over with a brand new computer. So that's what that could do. Number 2 is very important. Number 3, awareness of backups and space usage. Okay, I'm making my film and I'm going good and I'm real excited. And I don't notice, like a frog in boiling water, that it's slowing down on me. And then suddenly it's going way too slow, way too fast, and now it's too late. One of the ways we stop our computer from doing what Mark allowed his computer to do and actually commanded it to do is we pay attention to how much storage we have left. How do we do that? After I work on the film for a little while, I'll run in and check my drive. I'll pull up the drive and look to see how much space has been used. A good habit to get into is open your drive before you go to work every day and look at how much room you have as a filmmaker to fill that with video, because it will fill up fast. And sometimes throwing the raw footage on the timeline, 3 clips, now your computer's done. You haven't even done anything, you just threw it on the timeline. So these are really important, man. You got to understand, you got to have enough space. The 4th consideration is processing power, and 1, 2, and 3 will have a great deal to say about your processing power if you do them wrong. If you do these right, your processing power will always be there until your backups get so big that they're starting to take up the random access memory and the processing and all that stuff. So keeping an eye on your computer and how much data is being stored in its actual onboard drive is a key component of processing power, because as you use space, you lose processing power. Next slide. Or do you guys have any questions about that at all?
Good.
If you have anything that develops, just you can stop me and let me know, okay? So here we are now, and we're looking at a computer and a camera in your hand, right? You turn the computer on. What do I do now? Well, and this typically is true for PC as well. There are several ways to get your footage onto your PC or your Mac if you've done the compatibility research properly. Otherwise, this is the first step that you're going to notice there's some kind of an issue and I can't import footage. This is why these first steps right here in compatibility are so important, because when you get to this step right here, your computer is going to tell you whether or not it's going to take that footage. And if it's in an acceptable format, and the 2 formats I gave you are accepted by almost every single computer program that works, they're the best. H.264 and MP4 are the most accepted and the best. It's like an MP3. It's the most widely accepted audio file on the planet. It's not just America. You know what I mean? MP4 is the most widely accepted video compression formatting. YouTube uses it, Vimeo uses it, anything. If you're streaming a movie on Netflix, it was uploaded to Netflix in MP4 formatting, even though it was Steven Spielberg's company that did it. MP4 is a real good format. The other one, like I said, professional industry standard, H.264, man, you can't beat it. It's accepted widely. So I don't see you having problems being able to import to any device, whether it's PC or Mac, with those 2 formats. The way you can do it, though, is you can connect your device or connect your computer to the footage 2 different ways on most devices. One is you'll power your device on once it's plugged in to an outlet, because you always want to make sure your device is plugged into an outlet if you're going to plug it into the computer. One of the reasons that is some devices, when you plug them in and they're not plugged in, only charge the camera. Your computer's charging it. So it's an option for you to charge your device, but when you plug it in and it's plugged into the computer right after that, it stops charging and the card loads with the videos on it. A lot of computers, a lot of devices are confusing like that. So if you run into that step, just remember, plug it into the wall first and try to reboot it back into the computer. That should bring a memory card up on your screen on somewhere on your desktop. Once that happens, you'll double click it or whatever the command is for your PC, open that thing up, and then you can basically ghost all the clips and drag them into your external. You'll want to create files for everything to keep it organized, and that's all good. But the reality is that's one way to get the footage off of your camera, direct connection to your computer. The second way is, again, direct connection to your computer, but it's connection through your camera's card. And so what you'll do is, hopefully you have the right card in there and you actually got the footage to record in MP4 formatting or H.264. You'll stick it into the back of your device, or if it's a laptop, in the side in the card receptacle. You may sometimes, the newer devices, Kathleen, this may be an issue for you. You may need to buy an adapter card and plug the mini into the adapter card and then put the big card like you already have. We saw you doing that at the campground. Remember when you had to use?
Yeah, that's what I have. Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll use that if you have to for the cards. And I know you've already got some skill doing that. You literally put some of your footage on one of my cards for me. So you have a good understanding of the simpler things, but those are very important, right? So once you get that footage in, and this is, again, another step for you where you're going to have to decide where it goes. You've imported it, whether it's into Photos, which is an import app on your Mac and possibly on your PC, or you just opened a card on your desktop, ghosted them, and drug them right onto your desktop out of the file. Either way, you need to set up where it's going to be processed from. This is a step where you can ensure that you don't process it on your computer. You just drug it onto your desktop. There's 25 clips on there. Well, before we do that, let's back up. You're getting ready to drag all of this stuff onto your desktop when you only have 4 gigabytes of memory. That's not a good idea. So what we want to do is we want to first read the card before we import anything and find out how much it weighs. If the card weighs 54 gigabytes and your laptop has 4 gigabytes of storage, you know you're 50 times the acceptable rate of putting something on that computer. So don't do it. This is where you drag it from the photo app directly into the external hard drive. So it only stays in photo in limbo and it doesn't take up all your space. Then you delete it from Photos and get it off your computer afterwards. Or, and this is another way to do it, you take 1 or 2 clips at a time out of the card and you drop them right in your external drive. You take your time and you load everything to the external and avoid your computer at all costs. That's the way I recommend it. There's 15 different ways to do this, but the best way to do it is put all your footage from that card. Open that card up, you'll see a file, DCIM is what it's going to say. Take that blue file and drag it directly across the desktop and pop it right in that external drive so that it has no contact with your computer. That's the best way to do it. Now, once you do that, you're going to have to wait, and whatever your processor is going to send up a bubble window when you're transferring files. Do not do anything on that computer until those files are fully transferred. The reason I say that is where a Mac is concerned, a Mac can dedicate a certain amount of the RAM to processing and saving that footage. PC does not do that. PC dedicates all of the processing to whatever command you issue, thereby giving you a chance to fail every time you issue another command after you're saving something. And I've personally been through this and witnessed dozens of people lose a lot of good film over this. So in the end, it's always best to process through the external only. And I say that because, again, the processing speed of what you're doing, right down to going online, will be affected by how much work is in that timeline. Okay. Any questions about importing?
Covered it.
The import menus are going to be different on yours, Steve. And you will have a couple extra steps. You'll have to identify file path to get it to come into your workstation, whatever one you decide, and finding the file and then identifying file path. There are a few more steps, but if you take your time, it's all self-explanatory and one step at a time. That's the thing. Where I find people go wrong in all of this is the mouse becomes some kind of a clicker.
That's Melanie, right?
You have to understand, every time you push that thing, you've entered a command. And if you do not allow that command enough time to process, you're piling commands up on each other. And pretty soon it's just going to go, and it's going to be a big ball of commands and nothing's going to get done. And your screen freezes when that happens. So always, when you click, wait, let the device process, because I promise you, it registered that click. It just may be doing something in the background that you can't see yet. And a window pops up 30 seconds later because your processing has been hampered by the fact that you're loading video. These are all very important steps to understand, because you won't have to make the mistakes I made of thinking I was collapsing my computer and deleting 2 weeks worth of work so that it didn't collapse. This has all happened to me. Pay attention to your computer and the way it's processing. If it's something seems off, close the workstation, let it finish rendering and close it, and then go look at your drive and see if it's filling up. Very important. Video footage fills up drives. Processing video footage and making Bigfoot movies slams a computer into collapse. You have to monitor. Okay. So now we're on, which is essentially, I'd spend more time doing this probably than anything I do in my life for the last decade. This particular slide encompasses quite a bit, and quite a bit of difficult. This is where you're going to learn what you don't know about Bigfoot, and in this part of it. For me, choosing a clip is different than what you will be doing, because very simply, I know what I'm looking at and when I'm shooting, and the process is so ingrained that it's subconscious. Like, for instance, in a 2-hour expedition, if we have 3 instances and circumstances involving creatures trying to interact with us, and they've either made sounds or they've shown themselves or anything like that, I can tell you just by looking at the entire expedition in my drive, all of the clips, I can tell you where those 3 clips are, because I know how long I was there, how many clips I shot, and about when that happened in the timeline of clips. My entire life for 10 years has been clips, and looking at clips and finding clips and shooting clips. And so clips is the bulk of what I'm focused on in my life. And choosing the clip, like I said, is very easy for me. I can see the creatures in it on the thumbnail. I don't actually need to review unless I don't see the creatures, in which case I'll take a closer look. But in the end, choosing the clip, I will say it this way: pay close attention to what happens in the field and what you're shooting when you're shooting it. You will have a real good idea when you pop that card on your screen and it loads on your desktop and you open it and you see 35 or 40 clips. You'll have a real good idea. Well, wait, this happened at the beginning of the expedition, man. I had only shot 2 or 3 clips when that happened. So you're going to go to the 4th clip and take a look. If you click it and you open it up, it'll open up on your desktop, and you just want to manage with the mouse, not playing it. You're a scrubber now. We're going to get into the scrubbing on the next slide. But the bottom line is what you're doing is looking for that individual that created that incident. And see, this is where the value of the research that you do and how closely you pay attention to what goes around you and how you're shooting, right? For instance, a creature breaks a tree down and I'm shooting in that direction. Well, at the beginning of the clip, I go like this twice. Now, when I open that clip, there's my sign. I know that's the clip. All I had to do was move my camera twice. There's something going on. That's a signal for me in my workstation. This is the clip you're looking for. So anytime there's an incident, I'll do something with my camera. When I hit play and I'm reviewing clips, there it is. Boom. Now I drag it, I drop it, I put a red on my timeline. I have the actual incident clip. Instead of spending 5.5 hours looking at every damn clip, I've prepared myself. This is something I didn't mention in the lecture, but Mel will tell you, I'm a firm believer in the 6 Ps, man. Proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. We have to be hard on ourselves initially to ensure that on the back end, we come out with the data we went in for. Otherwise, we're wasting time, we're wasting money, and we're wasting effort and literally relationships. Because for every second you spend doing this, you are taking away from somewhere else in your life. Make no mistake. So you want to get the most out of it. Paying attention in the field. That's where it starts. Loading the clip is going to be a very simple aspect of what we do, specifically for Mac users, because it has a magnetic timeline. And what it does is, if I get even close to that timeline, it sucks it right onto it. I don't have to worry about moving around. I can get it right near it and boom, it jumps on the timeline. And I love that aspect of it. It's drag and drop, no file paths. Now, you can import via file paths. I know Melanie likes to use the file path when she plugs her alternative devices into my computer. I've seen her import through file path. Typically, when you open Final Cut and you put an external hard drive in, the import menu pops up by itself. I always X that out and build my timeline the way I'm going to show you. Okay. We're going to go over loading the clip, and we're almost there now. I'm just going to go over this real quick, and then this last 50 minutes or so, we're going to do the live load is the way I'll call it. Loading clip, very simple. Basic edits, we're going to go over all of that stuff. Audio, we're going to go over the basics, and I'm going to show you that workstation. And whatever workstation you choose, understand, Steve, it's going to have these same aspects. You're going to be able to manipulate the audio the way you want to make it louder and so on. All of it, the color of the film and all that stuff. Bigfoot research demands, in order for us to filter and alter the aberration that's a direct result of the solar phenomenon on these creatures' skin, we have to mess with saturation. We have to mess with contrast. We have to do things with color sometimes. We're attempting to change the broadcast of all the light we don't see. And if we do it right, the subjects stand out. That's the cool part. So voiceovers.
Put light in the shadows.
That's right. Well, brightening it is one aspect of it. The interesting part is today you're going to get to see what it's like to break a white down. When you break the whites down, that's all there is. You can't change anything. Okay. That's the difference between breaking those white creatures down. If they're turned green already, you will be unable to change the aberration. And that's one of the tells. The software does not know how to see these creatures yet. So we'll teach you how to do a voiceover real quick. Zooming on the timeline. This zooming on the timeline, man, you guys are gonna be like, my God, I don't know how you did this for 10 years. But we're gonna take a look at it. We're gonna break down a clip. And then we're gonna zoom in on a Bigfoot from a distance too. I'm gonna show you all that stuff. We're gonna entertain all the color variances and how to alter that to get a more balanced image of the creature. Now, it doesn't look like a balanced image. It looks like a balanced image of the creature, so we can see the creature. That's what this is about. That's what everybody complains about. Why are all these weird colors and it looks like it's a cartoon and all this? Because if I showed you the clip without any effects in it to bring the creature out, you wouldn't see the creature. They're missing the point. So in the end, we're going to work on transitions and titles. This is the truth of it right here. Noting the point of interest in each clip, you will know in the video import of the thumbnails of your expedition where the valuable clips are. Where are those clips positioned? Like I said, if you're paying attention, you're going to know, and it's going to make finding them a lot easier. So really, from this very first slide, one of the most important aspects of what I'm trying to impress upon you is that you have to have things right before you ever even go in the field. Or when you come out, you will be able to do nothing with the cameras you have. Looking at the footage and that stuff, you'll be stuck with basic methods that you can find. So setting this thing up properly. And you're gonna make the mistakes, and we're here, and we're gonna be here. And anytime you guys have any questions about any of it, you'll be able to contact me anytime you want. So right now, we're gonna go ahead and set up the live demo. I'm gonna let Mel set this up for you real quick, and then take a break, and I'll be right back. If you guys want to take a break before we start,